What is your living situation between here and Portland?
My work here is basically working on the house, building a cafe. I work remotely, but the main difference is really that I have a real home life here. I've got girlfriend, fiance. I've got 4 cats and a house, and we have a garden. I get to cook dinner almost every night, and when I'm at home in Portland, unless Gung is there with me, I wake up in the morning and I grab a coffee and I go to work, and I run around all day, and then I come back and I go a little on the computer, go out, have something to eat, come home, crash, and start over again, and do that 7 days a week. So the difference for me is that I have something more in resemblance of a life here.
Andy Ricker said on the podcast I listened to recently, he's like, Pok Pok was just a f***ing restaurant. If you attach yourself so much to this restaurant, that's not a good way to live.
You know what it is? It's an addiction. It's an addiction to building things and to pulling off this intricate creature that has all these moving parts. There's someone who has to do the business part. They need to fill out the paperwork to open an LLC, and they need to raise the money. They need to do an operating agreement. They need to negotiate a lease. They need to deal with all the different business shit that happens. Okay, what I do is I make this metal edging. And I'm a crafts person, and I go to my metal shop and I roll the steel and I make this edging. That's pretty cool. But then there's someone who needs to make the food. So you put all these elements together. Okay, that's another part of it. But then there's someone who needs to talk to the customers and be here and make all that flow. Okay. Then there's someone needs to make a drink. They need to buy that right kind of mezcal, and then they need to craft that cocktail and do that thing. But then someone has to decide what kind of glass that drink goes into. Take all of these crazy things that happen in our restaurant, put them together. That's what a restaurateur does. That's what we do. And it's a lot of moving parts that all have to come together as one product. Portland's based on artists. I don't really think restaurants are art in the sense of fine art. It's a craft. Right. But this whole interaction, there's art in it. There's the hospitality, the exchange. We made this thing, we put it in front of you, you sustain yourself eating it, you drink this, you talk to the person, you walk out going like, you know what, I feel good. Yeah, the world is a good place.
My grandfather immigrated and set up a grocery store in New York Chinatown on Mott Street. It wasn't just a grocery store, it served a purpose for the community, for the people of his village. It was a gathering place to pick up mail, to get their news, and he roasted the foods that we're making now, the duck, the pig, and chickens, and that's where I first developed a love for this kind of food.
I grew up in a small town called Chatham, New Jersey. I decided to go to culinary school in New York. After I graduated culinary school, I started working at a few restaurants in New York City and realized this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. In 2016, I decided to come here to Portland because my uncle and grandmother live in Hood River. It's a place that I've been coming to visit since I was a little guy. Fell in love with this place. You know, the people, the food scene, the culture, the outdoor activities at your fingertips. I just felt like my culinary journey was the right fit for Oregon.
I was really, really sick throughout my teens and early 20s, and I was eventually diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And it wasn't until they told me they wanted to cut into me and experimentally take out a portion of my intestines to see if maybe that would help that I thought I have to change something before I do surgery. So I radically overhauled my diet. I went gluten-free. And this was in 2008. So there was not the options available that there are now. And certainly what was around was not as delicious as it is now. But within 3 days, I felt so much better.
So I was born in Korea. I'm the middle child of 3. My dad's entire family was moved out to Oregon through my aunt who married an American soldier in the war. I think I was always drawn to food. Anytime my mom would sit around with a big bowl of dumpling farce, we'd like sit around and fold dumplings together. I think I was more about like kind of using my hands and prepping and stuff than I was about learning the background or ingredients or anything like that. I was about to enroll at the French Culinary Institute, and then somebody else was like, oh, why don't you just try and get a job? Go wash dishes or something, like get an entry-level position, but get your foot in the door. Maybe you don't have to plunk down a bunch of money that you're gonna have to pay back, or not be able to pay back for a long while. And so on my way to like enroll in culinary school, I stopped at the Spotted Pig. You know, at the time, it was probably in its first year, and April, my old chef, was on the rise to becoming the superstar she became, and I just worked for her for 10 years after that.
Food has always been an important thing to me. I think culturally, Chinese really love food. It's a very important part of the culture. There's great pride in it. I think a lot of people don't understand the breadth of what this cuisine is. So I was a journalist for a couple decades, and then I moved into some startups. And my first startup was an Asian American news and lifestyle website. This was in the late 90s. And I reached out to Martin Yan of Yan Can Cook, and we were collaborating on cooking demonstrations and recipes and selling his products. When I moved up here about 3 years ago, I saw it as an opportunity to possibly change careers and do something new, different, and follow a passion. And so the idea of the restaurant kind of started to take shape. I contacted Martin Yan, and I set up some training sessions with him and some of his chef friends. That was immensely helpful in getting my confidence and getting my training and being able to open this place.
I read Kitchen Confidential, and Anthony Bourdain talks a lot about immigrant workers in restaurants and how they're the backbone of restaurants, really. I was really drawn more to that part of the story than I was about like doing drugs and drinking all day and night and partying. At the time, I was watching a lot of like Food Network, and Jamie Oliver was really popular at the time, so I was like watching a lot of those shows. I was really drawn to that style of cooking, which is very minimal, like 2 or 3 ingredients, simple technique, and did a bit of cooking. And then my roommate at the time, he was just like, oh, you should get into food. It seems like you like it. And would watch me like really get into like cooking my dinners. And I think this is just a story of my life. Somebody goes, hey, you should do this. I go, okay. And I just go and do it. He was like, oh, you should like go, try and get a job at Whole Foods or something. I was like, okay, cool. And so I went, and it was like the first Whole Foods in Manhattan. It was in Chelsea. At the time, Whole Foods had like a lot of the organic produce and a big fish counter and a meat counter, and like obviously you become friends with all the people that you work with. And so I just got to learn about food in a way that I hadn't before. Growing up in Springfield, not really having too much money, I didn't get to go out to restaurants, nice restaurants anyways, and I didn't really have access to good food either. And so yeah, I got to learn about food in a different way, and I think it was the same roommate was like, oh, you should like try cooking at a restaurant, like you'd probably be really good at it. I was like, okay.
In regards to being a chef, that term for me, it's leadership, it's creativity, it's passion. Food in general is something that you should respect. Every ingredient is something that grows, something that's taken care of. What we do here is, a lot of our dishes consist of 5 ingredients from one ingredient. For beets salad, we use beets 5 different ways. Carrot salad, we use the carrot tops to make a carrot top pesto. Just little things like that to respect the food again. I've learned a lot of cooking techniques. I've met a lot of incredible chefs around the world from traveling. I try to dive real deep into the culture, into traditions, into what they put on the table for their families, and pay homage to that when I get back here.
Before COVID, I was a big dance competitor, and when I was in the middle of a dance that I loved, connecting to the music, connecting with my dance partner, that was in the zone, and I loved that. When you're doing the partner dances, it's not choreographed, it's more like a conversation, and so you're listening to the music and connecting with the music and connecting with your dance partner. There's a lot of flow and creativity in it, so you have to be very present and in the moment, and it's almost like a moving meditation. I can't say that I've ever hit that same moment in my cooking career, because usually I'm thinking about what's next or what other steps I have to do to complete the recipe. I don't do as great a job as being focused on the present and just in that moment, because I'm always thinking about what's in the oven and how much time is left, and oh, I have to wash these dishes, and oh, I'm gonna need that spoon again, or I have to go grab a new spatula. So I'm always critiquing and reworking things and thinking about next steps and the laundry list of what I have to do.
I just found myself one night in Thailand by myself, just having a beer, some garlic prawns, and looking around and just seeing how happy 1,000 other people doing the same thing as me were. And for me, it was reinforcement to everything. Just the industry in general was just love and community and bring people together.
I had been in and out of restaurants in my teens and 20s and always loved the kitchen environment, as crazy as it is. There's something about the adrenaline, the camaraderie, and also creating food that people love.
The most important item on our menu between here and Tokyo is my mom's kimchi. My mom's been making it. It's a way for us to talk about food. She's very particular about how she makes it. When the daikon is being imported from Jeju Island, which is where she grew up, what pepper flakes she uses, because she has my aunts in Korea gathering from local small producers there and paying a bunch of money to ship it here.
There's this psychological component to food where it's a way to bring everybody together and you bond over this meal. And when somebody can't participate in what everyone else is doing, it feels very exclusionary. And I've always loved to bake for people because that's one way I like to nourish people and show that I care, through food. And so I went to pastry school because that's what everyone does, right? And I learned the right way to do things so that I could break the rules successfully. And Kira's Bake Shop was born. Healthy pressure motivates me, it energizes me, and it excites me, and it lights a fire, it gets me going. For example, when I was on Cupcake Wars, that kind of bordered between healthy pressure and stress pressure, but there was something very exciting about it because it gave me permission to play with new ingredients or put new flavors together or new textures together that I might not otherwise have considered. And so that was exciting. But when it bypasses that excitement and drags me down and makes me feel depleted, that's when it's stress.
I can honestly say I've not had one day since the pandemic began that I haven't been in sheer terror at some point. It's not what drives me, right? I can get over the terror, I can talk myself down, I can figure out what we're gonna do. This is what we do now, this is where we live. So the idea of going into a future that's not driven or does not have an element of sheer terror daily and get back to that feeling, I'm thinking 2016, 2015, where things were going really well, and all I did was roll into a situation and be like, let's do it, this is gonna be amazing. You're gonna do cool shit, you're gonna make a bunch of money, you're gonna have your dreams realized, you're gonna be listened to, we're gonna do this thing as a community. Those were the best days. I can't wait to get back there.
I think I've compartmentalized that over 6-9 months of the shutdown.
COVID just put us all through a loop, man. Not just this industry, but obviously this industry. I signed this lease September of 2019. We were supposed to open in March. That didn't happen. COVID happened in March. So we were forced to have a pretty unfortunate limbo stage. It was a lot of stress, a lot of stressful times. July, we opened. We said, no matter what, we're gonna open. We did. Things weren't great. They were pretty awful, actually. Nobody knew who I was. Marketing my first restaurant was an emotional challenge for me. I had to take pictures of all of my food in a box and try to make people want to come eat it. How do you do that? So I found myself in tears some days. There was days where I just wanted to throw in the towel. There was days where it just didn't make sense. Nothing made sense at all. At all.
We planned this restaurant to be a post-COVID restaurant in the sense that we are takeout only. So there is no place to do dine-in. It's a little scary to do it that way. We are fortunate to have a really beautiful outdoor area. We have this kind of parklet. The slow months are the winter months because obviously people can't eat here. Spring, we expect it to explode. We had a great opening last spring and summer, and the fall were really strong.
This place was a runaway train, and we were growing and we were busy, and we had 18, 20 employees, and this place would be full. There was a Netflix show about to come out and getting ready for that, and I think it gave us another opportunity to stop and regroup and take a break, and I actually kind of welcomed it.
2019 was a great year for us. We had been increasingly profitable. I was making plans to expand. We had just opened a second store, and 2020 felt like the world broke. My husband of 13 years and I got divorced, sold the house that I thought I was going to live in forever, and was homeless. I didn't have to live in a tent on the sidewalk. I just had to bounce around from place to place. I just didn't have a permanent place. I didn't have enough income to prove to a landlord, and had a dog, so that was extra hard. The shops were closed for a number of weeks. The other shop is now permanently closed. People on the streets were shooting up drugs in our doorway and spraying blood and leaving used needles in our doorway. We would have people break in and poop in the kitchen and vandalize and destroy the inside of the bakery. And my employees were having to step over this at 4:15 in the morning and it was freaking them out. And so it was hard to keep employees, which totally understandable. I wouldn't want to deal with that every day either.
Kim Wilson from Commissary Cafe said, it's okay to slow down.
Yeah.
It's okay to give yourself some space. And I do hope you find enough employees to fill your restaurant again and everybody else, because that's the number one thing I've heard from every person is staffing is an issue.
The staffing shortages have affected us just like everybody else in this industry. It's very tough to find people, and I wake up every day praying that nobody calls out because there's nobody to back us up. We're lucky if people even show up for their interviews or even show up for their first day of work after they've been hired. We've been fortunate. Only 2 people have had COVID so far here, but they're out for a week at least. Potentially they've infected other people, so everybody has to get tested. It's been a real challenge just to keep the staff that we have coming in every day.
My team here wanted to work. They're hardworking people here, really hardworking. So we kind of as a team just suffered through it. There was days where they were wondering if they were coming back to work. I was wondering if I should put them on unemployment. I was just trying to figure out how to not lose this incredible team, but also show them the respect that they need a life. They need to get paid.
It was obviously really scary and stressful, and figuring out what to do with our staff. But as things went on and we figured out everybody can get on unemployment and they were all safe and set and covered by insurance that we were continuing to pay, as we recognized that things were okay, we just kind of took that time to really take a break, focus on our family.
I felt like I've opened 25 restaurants in the last 2 years, just based on pivoting, changing things, figuring things out and adapting. So for me, that was the hardest part. Every single day, figuring something different out. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
I feel like in the past couple years, people have been harder to please, myself included. There's still a part of me that cringes when somebody's unhappy, and I do my best to please everybody. And some people just can't be pleased. I keep wanting to be it's just cake. But there are people who have other stuff going on, and no amount of cake is gonna sweeten their day.
It's still really hard because things aren't back to normal, and we're still struggling with staffing, and costs are going up every day. Sometimes there is an off night, or the steamer isn't working, or the burner's not hot enough, or there's all kinds of stuff that goes wrong, and that's our job, is to work within those variables.
So now's the time for us to do marketing, get our name out there, build our community support, get our recipes down, get our cooking techniques down, get the flow of the kitchen locked in. So I'm hoping that by the spring, we'll have a lot of our cooks really trained up and in a rhythm.
It's up to you to wake up in the morning. It's up to you to go through that pain. It's up to you to handle it, and if you can't, I get it. I almost couldn't.
But it's just about being optimistic, and we know we just have to weather the end of this pandemic and the winter season, and we feel like we'll be coming out really strong in the spring.
We made the difficult decision to permanently close down Northwest. I knew that if I didn't take steps to close this down, that it was going to sink everything and I was going to have to declare bankruptcy. And so it took me 9 months to negotiate getting out of the lease, because I had 8.5 years left on that lease, which was expensive and scary and terrifying, and it feels like failure. for sure. I used to feel like I sparkled when I walked in a room, and I think that was something that really helped me on Cupcake Wars and on different media things that I've been on and in interviews. And it's not that I feel like I'm dull now, but it's like I don't have that inner light anymore, which is very sad when I think about it that way. I'm feeling incredibly ungrounded, and it's just wake up and put one foot in front of the other and take it an hour at a time.
It's a really demanding industry to be in. After sitting behind a desk for so many decades, I really appreciate being on my feet and really doing physical labor all day. But it is tiring, and I need my weekends.
I think a lot of people said, I got laid off from my job, and I didn't really like what I was doing anyways, and now I'm doing this other thing, and I'm making money at it. Why go back? Unless you want to be in a restaurant, we work long hours, we work late, we work on holidays, we work on weekends. We don't have the infrastructure to make it easy to take time off.
What COVID did, it caused me to think of every single possible solution to everything possible, if that makes any sense at all. Like, you're getting thrown 1,000 curveballs, you need to have 1,000 ways to hit those curveballs. I had to manifest that dream no matter what, like COVID or no COVID, it was something that I was never going to give up on.
There's something about the young creative who bootstraps their shit and blows it up that I think is wonderful. That's the artist.
I saw one of Chappelle's stand-up specials, and he was talking about how he bombed at some show, and he's like, he's just like Evel Knievel. He gets paid for the attempt, and that's kind of how I feel about it. We're trying our best. It's not like we're trying to serve you something that's wrong. We're doing the best that we can, and you coming in and sitting down and paying for the dinner, it's our attempt at it. Sometimes there's an off day, but it's not for the lack of trying. We're all trying our best, and so I think that's the biggest thing that I want for people going out to restaurants and trying to find some normalcy and trying to get back to the way things are, is that it's not, and we're trying our best, and I think that's the one thing I want to kind of leave with.